Good evening and welcome to our conversation. A few housekeeping announcements before we begin. This webinar is being recorded and we'll take questions starting approximately at 7:10. To ask a question, please type in your questions in the chat. Thank you. I'll hand it over to Nick.
Renica, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone out there in the Zoom world we cannot see, but I know that there are hundreds and hundreds of you for this very special event. My name is Nick Turner and I'm the president of the Vera Institute of Justice. I hope everyone got a chance to watch the film Aggie, as a remarkable film. I watched it last night. I was moved. I know that my mom, who is out there in the crowd now, watched it last week and had all sorts of great things to say about it. I'm going to begin by introducing everyone here, and so I'd like to start. Of course, those of you who have seen the film, and even those of you who have not, will recognize Aggie Gunn. She needs almost no introduction, and since we're going to be talking about her and the work, I'm going to move on and introduce her daughter, Katherine Gunn, Kat, as I know her, who is an Emmy-nominated producer, director, writer, and activist. A lot of Kat's work is focused on social transformation, arts and culture, HIV and AIDS and reproductive health and the environment. And her most recent projects include Dispatches from Cleveland, which was a 5-chapter documentary that looked at the police murder of 12-year-old Tamir Rice. Adnan Khan is also with us today. He is the executive director and co-founder of Restore Justice, which he co-founded when he was incarcerated. Adnan was sentenced to 25 years to life under a California statute called the felony murder rule when he was 18 years old. While he was in prison, he inspired and launched and worked on reform legislation that after serving his 16 years actually led to his release in January of 2019. Adnan, I believe, was the first person released under that reform legislation. In addition, Adnan, during his incarceration, created First Watch, which is a media filmmaking project produced entirely by incarcerated men in San Quentin prison. He's an Art for Justice fellow. And Russell Craig is joining us also. He is too a Art for Justice fellow. He's a self-taught artist who survived nearly a decade of incarceration after growing up in the foster care system. And Russell's art is, he creates his art as a means to explore the experience of overcriminalized communities, to reassert agency after a lifetime of what he has described himself as institutional control. His work has garnered a lot of attention, coverage in outlets, including the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Washington Post, Artsy, The Guardian, and the New York Times. Renica, if you wouldn't mind queuing up the trailer, while I know that many of you have seen the film, we wanted to begin with a quick look at the trailer just as a refresher. And then what I will do is engage our wonderful panel for about 35 minutes, and then we will open up for questions from the audience. So again, delighted to have you here, and just give us a few seconds for the trailer to begin.
Yeah. What do you think of the movie? I think the movie is great. Which movie are you talking about?
Renowned philanthropist and art collector Aggie Gunn stunned the art world when she sold Masterpiece by Roy Lichtenstein for $165 million in July and used the proceeds to start the Art for Justice Fund to combat mass incarceration.
We went to San Quentin. I had people come up to me and say, "What in the world did you want to do that for?" I think the case that struck me most was that of Eric Garner and that I Can't Breathe. I remember after he died, I just kept dreaming, I can't breathe.
Aggie understands that art makes it possible for us to have empathy, and that without empathy, there is no justice.
You have conjoined these two things, justice working through the arts.
I think of you as sort of the ultimate empath. You're somebody who really feels other people.
Oh, that's wonderful.
She laid bare wealth and privilege. Most people who have it pretend like they don't have it. And she said, I have this, and I want it to go to work. I want it to be so much bigger than one painting.
So I made questions today.
Why do you collect?
Have you ever cried in front of an artwork?
Do you want any of your grandchildren to be artists?
What is love?
Were you close with your mother?
Why aren't you a typical lady from Ohio?
How many of these conversations have you done?
What do you think you're going to do when you're grown up?
The giant question of life.
I heard you had sex with every artist that you collect. Is that true?
Wouldn't that have been fun?
That's so wonderful, Aggie. So yes, the film was wonderful, and you know which movie we're talking about. I want to begin by saying how proud I am as the head of Vera and a grantee of the Art for Justice Fund, because with that support, we were able to do a number of things that are important for thousands of people who have been touched by your philanthropy and the genius of starting the fund. It ranges from pretrial reform in New York State, where we helped to pass a bail reform law that reduced the state jail population by over 6,000 people. And I remember, I think a few years ago, you visited the Manhattan jail, the Tombs, with us, and so you have a sense of how terrible that environment was. And we think that we're also on the cusp of being able to return post-secondary education, college, to incarcerated students by overturning the ban on Pell Grants for incarcerated students that was put into effect by the 1994 crime bill. And if that happens, that will provide college education for over close to 50,000 students in prison. And so it's with a great deal of pride that we do that work, and I hope it makes you proud to know. And isn't it just wonderful to know that you and your team have been able to affect the lives of so many people.
Well, you've done such a good job, and the Vera Institute has always been, outstanding in what it tries and how much it reinvents itself and really is activist. So I thank you for that. But I love the fact that we could help you do things, because you put so much into it that but you were sort of alone in this when you started out, right? I mean, when you started this Vera Institute.
Vera has been around for almost 60 years, and I think that part of our and I have not, just for the record, but and part of what has been remarkable in the past few years and in our partnership with you is that we have been it has been an entirely different ball game, where we've been able to make progress on mass incarceration in a way that had never been possible before. And I think that you and Art for Justice are a huge part of that. You're not alone, and it's important that you're not alone, because it's a societal problem that we all need to contend with. I want to ask you a question about the film, which is, in watching it yesterday, one of the things that I loved at the outset was, I think you said when you were in the car, you're like, I hope a lot of people don't see this. But so how do you feel now about the movie, now that it's out in the world?
I think it's terrific that it's had so much attention. Katherine says that Ava DuVernay put it on
her website, and so a lot of people have seen it, and I've heard from many people that I knew in high school and stuff like that, that they've seen it. And so I feel much differently, because I think, as Katherine will tell you, it's at the right time now for it to be out. And she has gotten a lot of remarks about it, but a lot of people think that it just does touch on so many things that we have known about but never really faced. And we're facing the whole thing now of a change that's come about. And I hope if everybody can vote and can get out there, that we will have a real change. And with this change, it's come that Black lives, which I appreciate, are really more central to what we're talking about. And it's going to take some time for it to right itself, but it's on the way. And so I thank you for what you've done.
Well, thank you. There's a part in the film that I loved when you were reflecting on growing up outside of Cleveland, and I think you told a story about someone wondering how you or white Americans could stand, but I think you were relating to the Holocaust and the idea of Germans being in towns nearby where concentration camps had existed, and how people could have sort of allowed that to happen on their watch or while they were around. And you brought that back and said that, someone had raised a question to you about how could that have happened in the context of lynchings in the American South.
I was just stunned by that, because when he brought it up, he said, were you born in the 50s? And I said, of course, but I really didn't, I wasn't as aware as I should have been, but Brian Stevenson has done the most marvelous job with that. But so many people have pointed it out, and now it just seems a horrible atrocity that we were living through. Thank goodness I wasn't in the South, so I didn't have to be brought up to see it. But I hope I never would have gone to one of those things.
But what was so powerful to me is that how you drew the historical through line from that really to where we are now in this age of mass incarceration, which, as the movie The 13th articulated well, and as any historian of white supremacy in this country and the racial order would say that this system that we have now is a modern iteration of earlier forms of oppression. If it was Jim Crow and lynching then, or convict leasing before that, or slavery, what we have now is this system of mass incarceration. And so I guess my question to you is that through Art for Justice, you have helped people to see, and through this film, you have helped people to see this modern day iteration of racial oppression. And I wonder, beyond voting, what else would you like people to do? What do you hope this inspires people to do?
Well, I hope that it's a good question, but I do hope that you pay attention to what's going on. I did a 24 book thing for people at PS1, because I used to be head of that. And I hope people will read some of these books. You couldn't begin to get the number of books that there are out there now, and they keep coming. I get them every day. But I think what people can do is just inform themselves more of what does exist and what is being done and what isn't being done, because that's the important part, that we really, unless you really sort of go into it in somewhat of a depth, you won't know these things happen. And it you know, just that Russell and Adrian have, you know, both had the experience of this, and they are terrific people and doing terrific things now. And that's what people have to understand, is that they present themselves in such a way that you would never know that they had to go through what they've been through. So
yeah. Oh, and we have a habit in this country. It's an unfortunate habit that has fueled this system of mass incarceration, where we dehumanize the people who are touched by the system and don't think of them as you know, as brothers or fathers. Adnan is a new father, and might be one of the only people on earth enjoying the pandemic lockdown right now as a result. But it's and that sort of dehumanization, I think, when you speak to the humanity that that both of these gentlemen have, which I know well, I think it combats that, you know, the very thing that drives the system. Kat, can I ask you a question? So as the filmmaker, I mean, it's this very intimate portrait about, you know, your mom, your work, your lives, and you know, it also highlights you know, sort of this very pioneering social justice work that exists in your family. As director, what was the reason that you wanted to focus on the nexus between art and race and justice? Why was that important for you to do?
Well, it's interesting because I didn't set out, in fact, to make a film about Aggie, and I still don't actually, much as I adore her, think of this as a film about Aggie. Although people point out I did name it Aggie, but you know, it was really because she started the Art for Justice Fund and how she did that. And, you know, I love the way she answered the last question when you said, what else can people do? Or what do you want people to take away from this? And basically what she said was she wants people to pay attention. Adrienne Marie Brown will tell you, what you pay attention to grows. When we pay attention, we are in relationship. Paying attention is where change and justice can be imagined. And the other thing she said is to educate yourselves. And she's someone who has these, you know, one of the huge things, who knows how many things we've lost and what we miss now that we're in quarantine. But, you know, Aggie would have these dinner parties on the regular, like 3 or 4 times a week. And at everybody's place was always a book wrapped up, a different book. And everyone at the table, 8 different people, 8 different books, and people would open and she'd say, if you've read it, trade with the next person. And they'd be, you know, ones that were, you know, The Warmth of Other Suns, Just Mercy, things, art, and, you know, ways that, and things that wouldn't necessarily relate to that person, but something where you'd be able to learn. And to me, when I decided to make the film about Art for Justice, because I couldn't believe, as Rue says in the film, it seems so obvious, you know, and which is at once kind of not a condemnation of it, is a condemnation, or as Glenn Ligon says, it's shame to the rest of the art world, to the rest of the philanthropic world, that other people aren't doing this, because it is so obvious to turn this, you know, art, which is about the imagination, as Ava says, into justice. She didn't treat it as capital. She doesn't treat artworks as investments for them to increase in value and then resale so that she has more money. The only reason she didn't give this away to a museum was because she wanted to see the end of mass incarceration come out as a result. And so for me, the educating part, which you're working on getting these Pell Grants reinstated and on the inside, and when Aggie says educate yourself, to me it's also the through line that I could see that went right from Studio in a School, her other anchor initiative that she created, between Studio in a School and Art for Justice. And one of my twins, who you see in the film, Kofi, at one point said to me after he saw the first rough cut that I shared with him, and he just looked at me and he said, you know, if we'd had Studio in a School for the last 40 years in every school, we wouldn't have needed Art for Justice. And that's about the education and about the artwork that that Craig speaks so eloquently about, that was his survival, because it was an opportunity for him to have a voice and an identity and a way to communicate and a way to believe that his visions, his ideas mattered. And that's what the children talk about in Studio in a School. Sometimes people say, is there any famous artist that came out of Studio in a School? It's not a factory for artists, for famous artists, for people to become artists. It's actually acknowledging the artist in all of us. And so it's all of how those things relate. If you look at Studio in a School, it's in the biggest public school system in the country. The schools that it's in are in the South Bronx and Harlem and the Lower East Side and all over the city, in fact, but in places where that student, John Carlo, could stand up and say, I learned in Studio in a School to look at chaos and see a pattern. And that's what we all need to see right now. We are in chaos. We have been in chaos, but I think now everyone knows we're in chaos. Everyone knows there is no truth, that it's just what we make of it. And how are we going to see a pattern, both in the historical, the history that led us to here, but also in a future and a way out. And so that's why I wanted to make the film, because these, you know, it to me is really a diving board. It's an opportunity now for us to hear from Adnan and Craig to tell us about what patterns they see. You know, they're not going to be the same pattern you see or that I see or that each other, the two of them, are going to see different patterns. And these are all vital patterns going into the prisons, as your team brought us into the tombs. And actually we first met Adnan inside in San Quentin. Going into the prisons with Aggie is about recognizing, when she goes in, she sees, you know, when she says Craig and Adnan are doing great, that's because she saw them, she saw Adnan inside. She's like, why are people in here? Why are people in here? They are artists, they're scientists, they're teachers, they're people we need to help us solve the problems that we're facing right now. And I think all of those things is what I was trying to bring in to create a conversation. And that's why I love, Mom, that you pointed out that I really don't think there could have been a better time for this film to come out. Not that it's a good time by any stretch for anyone, but that the film's relevance was already in place before. And right now it's something that everybody needs and that everybody's looking for. Yeah. These ideas and these opportunities.
Thank you, Kat. That is for sure the truth. Russell, I want to bring you in, and then Adnan right after Russell. I mean, so you're both Art for Justice fellows, and I would love if you. So Russell, you were an artist, you know, really before you were in prison. I mean, that art was important to you. I don't know if you had anything approximating studio in the schools in Philadelphia, where I think you grew up. But do you see talk a little bit about your work and what you hope it seeks to convey, or to what kinds of reactions you want it to trigger for people? And do you see yourself as an activist?
Yeah, I would have to say that, like, I'm an activist by default. It's like not a choice. And then when it began, like, art was just a thing, like coming out of the foster care system and things like that. It was just like a way to maintain my like sanity, because I was going through crazy things my whole life. So artwork was like a way to escape. And then once I like being in the streets, I disconnected from art for some years, and then going to prison, I reconnected with art because it was my savior once again. But then it gets to, you know, fast forward to nowadays, and it's like the work has like a purpose even beyond myself. So I aim for people to remember, because we all know what's going on. Like, it's crazy times, COVID, white supremacy. I'm working on some work right now, and it's similar to something Kat just said, and I'm entitled, and I'm trying to do some work that's bringing back people attention, because it's like things happen that we get numb to it, kind of forget, and then they just keep doing stuff. Police keep killing Black people, white police at that. So that's like why I wanted to highlight like the white supremacy that's in the police force. So to answer that question, is like my work, I hope to like bring it back to where some people forget the importance of what's going on, or become numb to the point where it's like they just like be accepting of it. So I like to try to remind the people of like, no, this is real. you know, the COVID thing and Trump and stuff he's saying and telling the white supremacists to stand by and stuff, like, this is real. Don't take it light and be acting like it's just going to pass. Because I be in conversation with some people that be thinking that things are lighter than they are. And if you become content, then you don't really push towards change. You won't get with other people that's trying to make change, and you'll just accept things, and then it'll be too late by the time you wake up to see how crazy things really are.
Russell, let me ask you a question. I'm not sure if this was what you were speaking about, but and tell me if I'm wrong, but I think portraiture is significant to you, that it plays an integral role in your art. Why does it?
Well, portraiture, because that's like something that I did a lot. Like, that's something I worked on. Never really mastered it, but I always wanted to have like portraits that be photo, like, you know, realism and things like that. So I always go back. But you can find me making artwork that's not always about a portrait. I try to make it if it fits the subject. So that's like why I use the blood in my eval series. Went to the butcher and used real blood, because I didn't want to use.
What is it? Evile series? Will you say more about what that is?
Is because when I was a kid in foster situations, they would do the psychiatric evaluation, Rorschach ink blot test. So I revisit that and use blood, and because I wanted to like highlight the importance of like police brutality and like you know, all kinds of artwork, you know, artists has done. So I wanted to do something to like highlight the importance of it and also the trauma that we deal with. So I wanted to go into like the mind. I got some new work that I'm going to work on too, because I want to talk about more about trauma that we deal with, because like people talking about it, but I think it should be more conversations about the trauma everybody dealing with. And there's people out here losing their minds. This is like really crazy out here. And I don't think is like getting enough attention of like how much these traumatizing events affect people. So that's like why I used the Rorschach, and then I painted the eyes inside the blood of victims of police brutality, like Ayani Jones, for example, 7 years old. The police raided the wrong house and shot her upon entry and stuff like that. Like, I wanted to bring that back to people that probably forgot, because they give you so many cases of Amber Geiger kicking the door down and acting like you didn't know that was your apartment. Like, if she kicked this door down, you gonna act like this is your apartment? No, you know this ain't your apartment. You know what I mean? But like, you know, they it's real crazy. So I just like to remind the people, you know, and I didn't do portraits, but it kind of made a face, you know. I just used the eyes and used the blood and give the people the opportunity. What do you see? Just like how the Rorschach test would be. But I kind of wanted to make it like haunting, so that it wouldn't be like comfortable. And I think I was successful, because when I observed how people engage the piece, they would explain to me that it's like haunting. There was some few tears a few times I showed it, and you know, it's like, then that's when you know it's impacting the people, and hopefully it stays with the people, and then like hopefully some change come from that.
I haven't seen that work, but the mere description of it is haunting. Russell, thank you. Adnan, can I bring you in? I mean, you two, you're a Art for Justice fellow. When I introduced you, I made note of the fact that you created First Watch, which is a filmmaking project, you know, and films produced by incarcerated men in San Quentin. I would love if you would tell us a little bit about that work. But also, I'd be curious to know if you might also talk about your first encounter with Aggie. So now you're an Art for Justice fellow. So I believe she said that was in San Quentin itself. So tell us about your work, how you met, and what you're up to now.
Yeah, thank you, Nick, and thank you, Aggie, Kat, and Russell. And Russell, I just want to say that your background, not just the content you were talking about was powerful, but your background with the sound waves, if I'm getting that right. That's man. Oh yeah, I just saw that thing go behind you when you said, yeah, that's awesome, man. Powerful. Yeah. Yeah. So the First Watch and meeting Aggie and Kat, Helena, Darren, actually have they intersect, because I was working in the media center. That's what we call it in San Quentin State Prison. And I kind of don't know how to even start describing this, but somehow, some way, myself and my co-founder ended up convincing the administration to let us have a donation of brand new camera equipment, computers, and if we could create videos by incarcerated people, and somehow the administration could clear it and we could like put it on YouTube or something like that. And surprisingly, they said, yeah. And in came the donations, in came the 4K cameras and the computer and the software. And then when we got it, we're like, what do we do with this now? Because we don't have YouTube in prison. There's no internet access. We don't have professors coming in and teaching us how to do film. So we literally just, pun intended, trial and error. And we also started to just read books. But a lot of our learning of making videos inside came from watching TV and counting commercials, like how long each clip lasts on a commercial, what angle they use, why do they use the pan versus the tilt, as we were learning. But that's just like the technical stuff. First watch, imagine a group of people in prison, incarcerated, walking around the prison, filming our own stories, our own narratives. We're the journalists, we're the camera men and women, we are the story tellers, we are the editors, and we're the sound designers and people who score the entire piece. So everything that you see that's created from first watch is done by a currently incarcerated film crew. The importance of that, so I'm gonna get to the meeting with Aggie and Kat and Helena and Darren. And the importance of that is, I think that once we sat down, we weren't only talking about our life experiences, and shortly, yes, we were, but the importance of that was how we were conditioned through a punitive system prior to incarceration, and then particularly during incarceration. And so when we would using film is told through many mediums. It's told through writing, dialogue, is told through lighting, is told through sound, is told through many things at once, which in itself is a beautiful art form that we were discovering. So for us, as being incarcerated and being deprived of our senses and having sensory deprivation while incarceration, for example, when I was in a cell that I looked at a gray wall for several years, and what it did for me was the lighting, when someone was 5, 10, or even 15 cells down from me, the lighting on the wall would change in front of me. So I would know, oh, someone's coming. And so having, the concept of lighting and applying our personal experiences, like having the deprivation of light into our short little videos, how we're gonna use light, why use the light, why make it dark, why light things up. Also sound, being deprived of sound or the visual. So for example, I lived on the 5th tier, which is the 5th floor in San Quentin. And I had no view of whatever was going downstairs, but I could tell during shift change which officer is working, because I know Officer Johnson, for example, he walks with his boots really loud, or Officer Ross, for example, walks with his keys jangling a certain way. So I would know, oh, Johnson's here. Oh, Officer Ross is here. So utilizing those experiences with sound, kind of like Russell's doing with his background right there, and implementing it in a beautiful art form, mixed with activism and systemic oppression and incarceration and the punitiveness that we've dealt with and we're currently dealing with, was this beautiful art form. Meeting Agnes, Aggie and Kat, Helena, Darren, meeting them in prison was powerful 2 ways. I always say that it was great that we as incarcerated people got to meet Aggie and Kat and Helena and Darren, but they also met us. And so the value in that interaction should not fall one way, right? The value, we're talking about equality. And so what I felt from that meeting was they didn't come in as like, oh, I just sold the Liechtenstein, or we're privileged, or we're this, and we're gonna come to you and give you help because we feel sorry for you. It wasn't that. It was equality, how they approached us with all the conversations were of, you're one of us, right? And that's what I felt out of that meeting. And then when I got out talking about you're one of us, the next time I met Kat, it was in her house, and she and her son and Aggie's grandson made me Sundae ice cream and literally whipped up their own from scratch, the cream. So that's what I'm talking about. You invited me into your house once I got out. Completely different ball game we're talking about. It's not just philanthropy, it's relationships.
I wanted, that's I mean, my reaction to that is both, well, of course, that's how it should be. And then also acknowledging and hearing your, your surprise and your expression of what an extraordinary thing that must have been for you. I mean, you've been mentioning Darren Walker, the president of the Ford Foundation, and Helena Huang, who is the program officer for Art for Justice. So, but the extraordinary surprise of having been locked up and been treated in a non-human, in a othering way, and how surprising it is to actually be treated as human and to be able to partake of that relationship as you just expressed. It is both a sad statement of what we usually can expect of people, and extraordinary. Aggie, I want to bring you back in to this for just a quick second. It's been wonderful listening to Russell and Adnan talk about their art, and obviously we watched the film, and you have had a relationship with art for a long time. Has the Art for Justice experience of working with and supporting incarcerated and formerly incarcerated and system impacted people, has that taught you anything different about art? Has it helped you to see a different dimension in any way?
Well, it is interesting because, art, it doesn't really matter who is doing it. I mean, what their backgrounds are or what they bring to it. It's just so interesting to see art being done by everybody. That is, it's good. I like peaceful art, as they say, but where some people they will just collect art that is very much of a struggle, like Bacon's art, but for instance, but I really do like art that has beauty and that is is Pacific in that way. So everybody has a different take on what they like. I was listening to some people today talking about what they collected, and it was really interesting conversation because it was very much not always what I would collect, but that's the neat thing, that you get such different results from people, and you see things differently, and you learn a lot when you see different artists.
Aggie, can you speak for a moment about this show that really blew both our minds, that is at PS1 now, that has one of
Marking Time? Yeah.
How that's such an amazing example of a different kind of art than you've been collecting over some previous years. And
well, it's a great show. You must go and see it because it's just in one room or one section of PS1, but it does do a lot to bring it into focus. What people can do with a little amount of things, which was what we've found with so many of these people that have been in prison. They did, when they had no things that they could work with, really very little. They had toothpaste and stuff like that. But this is, now they have more equipment, just like Russell has more equipment than he can use. And these things that he's doing with its sound and light things are really very interesting. I think, that's the show that you must try to make if you can, because you'd like it, Nick. and I think the other two probably will go, won't you? Have you been to it, Russell?
Oh yeah, my work is in there.
Yeah, I thought, but have you seen all the show? You went.
Oh yes, yes I have, because I helped install it.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's great.
So this is the at PS1, which is the Queen's Outpost of MoMA. There is the marking time as an exhibit that everyone should see, and you'll see Russell's work. And I don't know if Jesse Crimes' work. When you started talking, Aggie, about how Jesse Crimes is another Art for Justice fellow who I guess was from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and so quilting is part of his work, and so that's behind Kat. But Aggie, when you talked about the idea of peaceful art being able to emerge in a environments of violence like prisons and folks like Jesse having to use things. I remember, I think in the film he talks about having to use hair gel and and bed sheets in order to construct construct his art. I'm going to open up to questions from the audience, and so the first there. So one is a question for you, Aggie, and it is: do you expect that your illumination of the need for criminal justice reform and your philanthropy around that will impact others to use their art to do the same? So maybe if you wouldn't mind talking about whether you launched Art for Justice in 2017 and whether others have joined in, and whether you're hopeful that as you wind down your effort, which I know you will, I think it's only supposed to be for 5 years, whether others will take up the mantle.
Well, they have done that, and they have quite a number of people have given things or put things up in like Times Square, which Paula Crown did, and other people like Mark have given us a piece that we can sell, and we did sell, and he did sell, I should say, and that made money for Art for Justice. And we are thinking now of having a 6th year. I don't know whether we'll be able to have it, because we may have spent the money before it comes to the 6th year. But we think we've raised some money as we go along, and another person gave a piece of jewelry, which was wonderful piece of jewelry, and on and on. They all take and look at it from their point of view, what they can do and where they can put in money. And some people just put in money, didn't give it to any specific thing, and that's also very helpful for us, because we do, when we go to these meetings, we do think of things that haven't been out there before and give to that kind of thing. So it's always inventing, we're always inventing something to do that we haven't done before.
I think it did inspire. I mean, from the very beginning, Aggie inspired other people to join. And when she launched it, she asked some of her peers and other collectors and philanthropists to join in the effort. And over 30 of them did, and gave us money from the very beginning. And then Mark Bradford, as she referenced, it has now inspired other artists, Julie Meritu and Paula Crown and Mark DeSuvero, and even some of our fellows, Art for Justice fellows, Dwayne Betts and Farr, who gave a piece from their edition. And shout out to the Ford Foundation, who covers all administrative and staffing costs. So every dollar that comes into Art for Justice goes out into the field. And you're exactly right that the idea of a 5-year spend down is to get the money to you and to Craig and to Adnan and to people who are doing the work and who know how it needs to be used and who need the resources to move their visions forward. And so the idea was never to hold on to it. It was to give it and to inspire other people to give it. And it's a huge privilege that we may have this 6th year. And I love that Aggie said we may not have it because we might spend it. And it is the impulse of Aggie to respond to this moment of the uprisings and the racial reckoning, as well as COVID and the desperate needs that we're facing right now in our communities, especially inside prisons and jails and detention centers. And so we've been sort of applying some of the funds early. So I think
we did give some of it to LeBron because LeBron comes from Cleveland, as everybody knows, and or Akron, but it's Cleveland. And Katherine was at the stadium the night that they won the NBA championship. He won another one, I realized this time, but it didn't have as much resonance as it had then. I had talked to the president then, that Obama, and he said, what do you think is important for Cleveland? And I knew he had to go to dinner, so I hurried through it. And I said, well, what I really want you to do is cheer for LeBron's team. And he looked at me, he said, well, you know, I have a friend that is on the other team that is a good friend of mine, and I don't know whether I can do it through the whole thing, but I'll do it for this one. And that was the one that was the turning point of why we won. So it was great.
Are ever indebted to you for that special.
No.
But what she's referencing is that LeBron, in addition to being one of the world's, if not the world's greatest athlete, I'm a fan, is also an incredibly passionate and brilliant justice-seeking person. And he has devoted some money to one of our anchor grantees, which is the Florida Rights Restoration, of course, and and Desmond Meade. And so he's been helping get formerly incarcerated people registered and getting them to the polls and paying their fines and fees, which was imposed upon them by the Republicans and the right wing after the people of Florida, over 75%, said they wanted formerly incarcerated people to have their right to vote. So it's been a push, and LeBron's been right in there, and Aggie loves to partner with LeBron on good things, and what better than to support the visionary Desmond Meade.
Right, and I'm sure that LeBron doesn't mind that Aggie just annexed Akron for Cleveland just here and now. I mean, why not? But it is a great example. For those of you in the audience who don't know, the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition led this work to get on the ballot the return to franchise for formerly incarcerated people in Florida. That was approved by 65% of Floridians, I believe, in 2018, and then it has been fought tooth and nail. And so the resources that come from Art for Justice now are efforts to make sure that some of those people who have won their franchise again, but are now forced by the Florida legislature to pay fines and fees, which are essentially the equivalent of a poll tax, that they can still get through that and be able to vote in 2 weeks. So really important work right now. I believe there's another question. So Aggie, another question for you. Based on your philanthropic experience, what are your recommendations for community foundations interested in building grant-making programs to support local arts organizations? I don't know if you have an opinion on that.
I think, just do it and do that. It's always we can always use more philanthropy. There's more to do in this world, and some of it is really interesting and hasn't been done so much before, which is that now that you have more attention being paid to what the inequities that we've had in our system, and the way that Blacks are treated. I think there's a real good way to go there. It may seem to some people that it's overkill, but it isn't overkill because we have been so remiss in treating the people that I'm talking about equally with other people. And I think that we finally have broken through, and depending on the vote that we get in 2 weeks, we'll be able to go with it more than we have before.
Yeah, thank you. Those in the audience have been writing a few things in the chat. If you have questions, I certainly welcome you if you are. Actually, I don't know if you're able to unmute yourself, Renuka. Are people able to do that? And if not, I'll
unmute.
While we're waiting, Adnan, did you want to hop in?
Yeah,
I did. I want to kind of jump on the last question about the recommendations for community foundations, but as a perspective, my perspective as a grantee, and really briefly, I just want to quickly share something very personal. When I was 12 years old, well, first of all, when I was in the 3rd grade, I had a best friend. We hung out all the time, every day, and he ended up moving away. Never saw him again. I remember as a 3rd grader, it affected me. He was one of my best friends. 3 years later, after my real dad just kind of disappeared, my mom remarried, I moved in with my stepdad and my mother, and literally across the street, 3 years later in 6th grade was my best friend from 3rd grade. And fast forward a few months later, I had an abusive stepdad, a distrusting stepdad. And one day I'm at a park with my best friend in 6th grade, and he ends up throwing a punch at me. He misses. We end up getting in a fight. And I found out that weekend that my stepdad paid my best friend $10 to try to beat me up. And even as a 6th grader, I remember being so betrayed that it's not even the amount of money, but it was a best friend turned on me for some amount of money. And that carried me for a long time with friendships. Now, here I am in the nonprofit world, where as an executive director, where part of my job is fundraising and money. Also, I want to throw in there that my actual father, my biological father, had a lot of issues with money. He used to borrow money. And I used to hate that growing up. It was embarrassing. So adding that to that perspective as well. So what I want to really quickly share is, I think that giving money is important, obviously, but I am very much against, me personally, against transactions.
Okay.
I froze? Oh, no.
You're doing okay.
So what I was saying was, just want to end with by saying that sometimes it can just be only transactional. Here we have money, here you are as an advocate, here you go. And it's not personal. And what I find with Art for Justice is the personal connection, because it's not that you're a funder. Even the term funder is othering, kind of, sort of, right? It's like, okay, here you are sitting here in whatever high chair or chair, and you're a funder, but you're not a friend. You're not a partner. You're not a fellow advocate with me in the same mission and vision and what we're trying to achieve. So I just want to throw that out there for people who are funding. Try to make it as much as you can less transactional and more personal.
Adnan, is there part of Art for Justice? There's a community that is important. You feel like you're part of. Russell, curious to hear your take on this. Whether you're part of a movement, a family, like a collective.
I'll jump in there real quick. Absolutely, and I like that point, and I like how he worded to like, and saying that to the people, not to make it like just like a robot, like, make it human. So and Art for Justice do that. And for example, like, you got me to thinking of like my personal experiences with Art for Justice, and the Ford Foundation, they had an Art for Justice, like my new friends, like threw me a birthday party. So it was like overwhelming, because my whole life I never had like family like that. I had like, foster family, and it wasn't like a fake family. It was like these people you just was in their house and things like that. So when they Tanya Coke brought me a cake from New Jersey all the way to New York, like, because I didn't want I think it's Junior's. I wanted Cheesecake Factory, and she brought it all the way, and it was just like I had like a moment. You know, I really had a moment of like,
Russell, you live in Brooklyn. You wanted Cheesecake Factory cheesecake, not Junior's.
Yeah.
Russell.
Yeah.
Russell.
Yeah. I'm from
Okay,
Philly.
go ahead. But anyway,
I'm from Philly.
Okay.
I'm from Philly. So Cherry Hill, New Jersey is where I get my cheesecake. But it's like the love. They treat me like family. Kat had me what was it, Thanksgiving over there over her house for like and it's like they don't just fund you, and you know it's like a family. So it be getting overwhelming. I ain't tear up. I almost teared up at the birthday party though. I had like a little moment, but like, yeah, it makes a difference. It's something different with Agnes, the Gunn family, Ford Foundation. We had dinner before. You're like, you treat me like family, and I really appreciate that. And I see that with everybody. We went to Chicago, is love, like Art for Justice, love for everybody, and that's a big difference. It's gonna be a hard act to follow because a lot of people probably not as genuine. So, but you know, they could work on it. Hopefully.
That's
Nick, can I throw one thing in there, Nick?
Yeah, by all means, do it.
So when Kat emailed me, when you come to New York for this Sunday ice cream thing at her house in New York, so she said that, hey, you know, this is a friend raiser. That's what she called it, quite literally. And so other people from Art for Justice, Helena, and other people were at Kat's house as well, and friends and other Art for Justice fellows. Just a group of people were there at Kat's house, and she called it a friend raiser, which I love, and I just want to throw that out there.
We're about ready to wind down. Russell, I'm so tempted to keep hazing you about this cheesecake thing, but you know, I don't want to waste our time. But it's right on the tip of my tongue. But here's my question. Okay, if you say so. But here's the thing. You know what I love? There's a quote that from Ava DuVernay at the start of the film. It says, "Art requires imagination, and justice does as well." So little speed round for all of you. I'd love to hear if you think that we have enough imagination to get justice right in this country. And so why don't we just finish up that way, and then we'll say goodnight to everyone.
I think we're on the brink of it. I mean, I think we have a good shot at it now, depending on what we do as far as the election. So.
All right. Russell, how about you?
Yeah, I would like to think so. Because without it, I put a lot of my hope in the creativity, being an artist and the things that I try to do. And I'm just one part of it. So I'll be hoping that my art planted a seed for somebody else that might have more resources or more capabilities to do a thing that I probably can't do. So, and that takes imagination. It all starts from a thought, you know, so, and then it goes into actions. So yes, I believe we do.
Kat, Adnan?
I'll let Adnan have the last word, but I would say we definitely do, but we need to practice. Artists practice every day. I think organizers and activists and advocates work every day. And that, to me, it's really about allowing ourselves to imagine abolition, even if we can't see how we could possibly get there. I think we have to imagine that. And then say, where are we now and what are the steps we need to take? But we have to give ourselves that place to look forward to and to work towards, because who needs to keep working towards keeping the status quo?
I'm going to just end by echoing what everyone just said, and I'll only add another Art for Justice fellow named Samora Pinderhughes said, "Do not let them police your imagination."
Well, I have to tell you about another. You were talking about light before. Look at Rembrandt's work, and sometime I'll show you what I mean by how he uses light. He just scratches out parts that he has in there from another print and makes a wonderful print from just removing things for light.
I want to thank Kat, Aggie, Adnan, and Russell so much for taking the time to talk with us today, but really not just for today, for the inspiration and the humanity that comes through Art for Justice and the work that you've been engaged in, how it's helped organizations like Vera do good in the world for thousands of people, ultimately that we never get a chance to meet, and they don't know that in the chain of causality that Aggie, that you sold a painting a few years ago. You had this radical idea. Not only do you see beauty and peace, but you also have a commitment to just do it. And you did this thing, and as a result, people's imaginations are open, but thousands of people in my state, in New York State, are who maybe have come into contact with the police, are home with their families right now, like with their children, with their spouse, have not lost
eating cheesecake.
Eating cheesecake.
Word,
hopefully
word.
at Junior's, the ones in Brooklyn, except for this guy from Philly.
Yeah.
And so I just want to say thank you so much. And Adnan, you mentioned Samara Pinderhughes, and so we're going to actually end this evening. I think Renuka is going to cue up the song from the end of the film. So those of you who have joined us, thank you for joining us. You need not rush out and leave. You can listen to the music, and thanks again. And so Renuka, are we all set with that?
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Production secrets. Into the unknown.
Wait, should we set? We're not seeing the image, Renuka.
Do the same spot.
Oh, it looked like you were about to click over right at the end. Sorry about that.
What is the measure of a life? What is our place in this design? I dream of a day when the truth is told, and the sign of our worth is in the hearts we hold. Can we see a path forward in the ink of the pen and the time that we spend? I will fly into the unknown. I will find ways to be free. Just imagine with me. Just imagine, please imagine with me. Is everything all set in stone? So many of us feel alone. I dream of a day when the borders break and we see the change that we all can make. Can we find the deepest courage in the lives of our friends and the things we can mend? I will fly into the unknown. I will find ways to be free. Just imagine, imagine, please imagine with me. Just imagine with me. Just imagine.
Nick, you know that's Catherine's son. That's Catherine's son.
I did not. I wish I was a music exec. I would.
And he wrote those lyrics, and that's the theme song for the film that goes over the credits. And Samora wrote it and performs it, and Tenzin sings it. But I love the words. Actually, I'm sorry it was skipping so much. So people can see it online if you want to see it.
It's beautiful. Such a beautiful way to end the evening. Thank you all so much. Thanks to everyone out there in Zoom land joining us. Have a peaceful and beautiful day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.